everyone, I'm Steven Sigmund,
And I'm Mike Massinio.
and this is the Weekly Movie Throwdown, a discussion show where each week we dig into a film that fits our overall monthly theme. This month, that theme is One Crazy Night, and this week we're talking about Game Night from 2018, directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. It's a pretty fun movie, I have to say. I revisited it after not really thinking much about it the first time I saw it, and really, really liked it. So it's going to be fun to talk about. A couple of news things before we start talking about it, though.
Yeah, so I, of course, was going to talk about the breakup of HBO, which I'm not going to talk about. I'm sick of talking about Zaslav and the disaster that's Warner Brothers and HBO. So I'm just not going to do it. But I came across two things that, of course, fit into stuff we talk about all the time. One was about the growth of productions in Mexico spurred by Netflix. So it looks like Netflix has committed to spending like $1 billion on production in Mexico, which is a huge boom to them. But this is something we've been talking about the moving away from LA and all these places that they're filming now, and the incentives that a lot of companies are getting to move to other places. And apparently this has been a huge thing for Mexico, where they've been trying to push more production there. But yeah, Netflix has a lot of shows that they produce, even Spanish language stuff and various movies. So they're doing quite a bit of work down there. And I'm fascinated for this in a bunch of different ways, because obviously the country's stance alone on Mexico is precarious at best. But Netflix has not only decided that movie theaters don't matter, but California and LA don't matter either. So they just seem to be single-handedly trying to change the scope of what is done and how it's done and how it's distributed. So they're making a big push to Mexico.
It's incredible how much money they have.
Yeah.
As I understand it, they're building sort of a lot here in New Jersey that's going to rival the LA sets. And they have one in New Mexico, too. And I would assume they have one in Atlanta. And now they're building another one in Mexico. And I'm sure they have others in other countries. So it's just really fascinating how much money there is out there for them to build like this. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's going to lead to more content that I won't watch. So
that's true.
Good for them.
The other one was I was reading about Thunderbolts, and we talked about it because we both saw it and we both kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than any Marvel movie I've seen in quite a while, and the reviews were really good. But it turns out that none of that mattered. That it's only made about 371 million, I think, globally as of right now. And seeing as how they expect these movies to make like $1 billion, it's kind of a big deal and considered a failure. And that's a big red flag, because they went into making something that they felt was a quality movie, and it still didn't get any eyeballs. And it's just this third, fourth, fifth, whatever phase we're at, I have no idea anymore, but it just seems to be dead in the water. I don't think that people are flocking to these anymore, and that means it's only more pressure now on Fantastic Four, which, I mean, I think all the eggs now are in this basket. It has got to do well, because this is going to open up the next big storyline. So I think that there's a lot of pressure now on Fantastic Four to do well.
I don't know if it can come back. I mean, there's the Avengers Doomsday thing. I guess that's next year, but
right, that's what starts with Fantastic Four. So it's like that's going to introduce all the main pieces that are going to lead to Doomsday. So
is Thunderbolts just like an okay punctuation on the last phase, and now we're on to a new one?
Well, no, because the ending of Thunderbolts actually introduces Fantastic Four. Like, it teases what's coming. So these two worlds are going to merge. I mean, I think what it's heading towards is this dual Avengers thing, and the Fantastic Four kind of in a separate way leading that wave that's going to end up in Doomsday, but all these different factions are going to come together. So the Thunderbolts are not going away.
I'll be curious to see how Fantastic Four does and how Superman does this summer, because are we just at like peak saturation with superheroes, or do we just need Pedro Pascal and a new Superman film before we get to like the good stuff, the Avengers next year? Because that feels like it's not going to lose money.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, but again, because the way Marvel movies are built, the Avengers movie is a culmination of things. So I don't know. Some people may feel like, well, I didn't like any of this other stuff. I didn't see it, so why would I bother going to see the Avengers in the first place? But
Yeah.
Superman, I think Superman's a big deal because I've always felt that Superman matters, whether you like him or not. Like Superman himself, it just matters. Making a good Superman movie is important, and people have failed to do it for so long.
Yeah.
But I think having Superman work is really important. So everything for James Gunn's new universe hinges on this success too. So yeah, it's a lot of high stakes superhero movies coming out this summer.
What a crazy thing to even say.
Yeah, I know. Um, but
That's
speaking of
insane.
summer, and that's the things like Thunderbolts didn't do that well, and I was going to talk about this last week. We know how I feel about these cash grab live action remakes of animated products. But look, regardless of how I feel about Lilo and Stitch, which I clearly misjudged, that I think everyone misjudged it. I think there's way more love for Lilo and Stitch than any of us imagined. I think there's a demographic or a certain age group that must have loved it. So again, I don't really care that much. I care about an existential way about this remaking stuff that already exists. But look, it just drove more people to the movie theater than any movie this year. And, it's like a direct rebuke to Sarando saying that no one wants to go to the movie theaters anymore. And they do. Apparently, they just want to go and see terrible Disney remakes, but it it does. And so what? If that's what it takes, like, I don't really care anymore. If that's what it takes to bring people to the theaters, to keep the movie business alive, fine. You got my vote. Like, it doesn't bother me. As a movie snob or whatever you want to call it, I don't love it, but look, that's driving people to the theaters in droves.
That's great. And this week you have How to Train Your Dragon, the live action
Yeah,
version of that, which I would normally scoff at, but it has our beloved Gerard Butler in it. So
right.
I'm going to give it, a longer look than I normally would.
And I'll,
And
I'll tell you this, my son, who remembers the animated ones and really liked those movies, he really wants to go. I'm kind of putting it at arm's length. Like, I don't know for sure if I really want to go, but if he really wants to go, we'll go and see it. So yeah, I expect us to do pretty well too.
I think that it's, from what I've heard, it's like a shot for shot remake of the animated one, and that seems to be something that's happening a lot, right? Is that how Snow White was? I'm so out of touch with this stuff that I don't
No, Snow
have
White
any
was
idea.
not a shot for shot, which is why, I mean, they had to change a bunch of things because they're trying to remake a movie that was made in 1939,
Yeah,
37. So obviously there were some things that they had to adjust.
true. Yeah,
So, yet they still had dwarfs, but you know, whatever. um, but
kind of important to the story.
that's fair. That is fair. But yeah, so there were some things, and of course, that's what people complained about, that
Right.
they changed it from what it was, and that's the whole thing. But yeah, with Snow White, that's kind of why Sarandos had said that Snow White failed because people just don't want to go to the movies anymore, and that's
Well,
and that's wrong, and that's false because Lilo
yeah.
and Stitch proved that they do. So
Yeah, I saw something last week that I didn't expect there to be a crowd at, and it was super packed. So, and like Tuesdays for some reason I mean, they offer discounted tickets at my theater, but there is always a much bigger crowd than I'm anticipating at a Tuesday film. And the Monday night films that are the screen unseen things that AMC does where you don't know what the film is, that's always a packed theater. I mean, some people walk out when they find out what it is because they don't want to sit through it, but they're getting to the seats. And that, to me, that's pretty amazing to get a theater full of people on a Monday night or like a Tuesday afternoon. So, whatever Ted Sarandos is saying serves him and Netflix and their narrative, but it's certainly not reality because we're seeing people at the movie theater all the time.
it's true.
Uh, I think you might want to go to the movie theater once you hear this next story that I have to tell you. There's a film called Rebel. Do you know this film?
Not Rebel Ridge, just Rebel.
Just Rebel.
No.
Okay. And maybe you know it by its original name, No Place to Hide, from 1971.
Okay. I think I'm still a little stumped here.
So this is a very small independent film from 20-year-old filmmaker Robert Schnitzer that really never saw the light of day. It was licensed to a few places like streaming and whatever, a director's cut of it later on. It's significant because it's the first film that starred Sylvester Stallone. So it's one that nobody has seen really. And it's going to be put in theaters for the first time now all around the country starting this week. So you're going to have an opportunity to see a 24-year-old Sylvester Stallone in a role where he plays a Vietnam vet who tries to blow up a cookware company that creates tiger cages to put people in Vietnam. It's possibly a precursor to First Blood, as I say that out loud.
Wow. Yeah.
So this might be something worth going to the theater for. I can't imagine it's going to be a full house, but if you can find a screening of this, I'm sure they're going to be in New York. You know,
I may have to call up my brother and go check that out. I also
there
have to
you
tell
go.
him that I saw that they're going to be screening the director's cut of Rocky IV, that director's cut that they put on Amazon like last year. That's going to be dropped in movie theaters, I think, in November. So,
Is that the one that's like Drago's POV?
I mean, that's what it was presented as, but that's false. I did see it, and it's just there's a little more Drago in it, but it's just much more serious. Like they kind of cut out all the comedy elements of it and made it just a bit of a darker movie, really. So, but
Ugh.
not really that much Drago POV, but a few more Drago scenes.
I mean, if you cut the comedy out of Rocky IV, you're cutting like 30% of the movie.
Well,
It's really funny.
they cut out quite a few scenes and added a bunch of scenes, but
Oh.
the cut is still only like 92 minutes. So you're right. There's not.
Well,
It just kind of breaks even.
I sure hope they don't do that for Rocky 3 because that's like
You
75% of
can't
that
touch
movie.
Rocky 3. It is untouchable.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about soundtracks this week, and I was talking to Laura about them and how Singles to me felt like one of the first like real big soundtracks. We talked about with Go. That's how she and I started talking about it and how No Doubt got on there and everything. And I was telling her that I remember buying Rocky 4, the soundtrack on cassette, and it was like the most amazing thing I had owned in the 80s because it was just so like uplifting and motivating. And I played it to death. And then I realized like I had the Cobra soundtrack and I had, I don't know if there was a Rambo soundtrack, but I had this kind of like string of Sylvester Stallone soundtracks. Over the Top was another
I
one.
told you we can, one of these days maybe I'll finally make my Stallone series that I want to talk about. But yes, I mean he had a lot to do with soundtracks as well. We own First Blood Part 2 soundtrack, which had Peace in My Life, a song that was made by his brother for the movie. Totally remember that. I
That's
have Rocky
amazing.
4 soundtrack on album. I bought it on LP. So I still have that. So you're totally right.
Yeah. Oh, he knew how to make a soundtrack.
He
And you
knew how
know
to
that
make
he had a hand in it.
Yeah, he knew how to make movies for the audience that he was aiming for.
Okay, two other just quick notes on upcoming films. First is Warner Brothers is continuing their embracing of the auteur, and they're giving Robert Eggers the keys to the car to make his version of A Christmas Carol, starring possibly Willem Dafoe, which I think a Robert Eggers Christmas Carol is fascinating. That is going to be so good.
Uh, yeah.
I mean,
My first thought is I highly doubt I will watch this with my family.
it's going to be a dark one for sure.
Yeah.
But I am very, very intrigued by this. I mean, with Nosferatu and The Witch in particular, like the period stuff, this just seems like the ideal thing for him. A Christmas Carol horror movie, the way it was meant to be, if it's a horror movie. The other thing is that they've announced a sequel to Spaceballs at MGM with Bill Pullman coming back, also his son Louis Pullman coming back or making his appearance. Mel Brooks is going to be involved. I think they'd better hurry up. This is a 2027 release.
Yeah.
I think he's pushing 100 years old.
Yeah, most importantly too, I saw that and that Rick Moranis is actually coming back, and he's been
Moranis is coming
retired
back.
for years, so he's
Yeah.
coming back for this.
An interesting choice to make your way back into
Which
filmmaking.
I think that does say something, though. It shows that the people that worked on that movie probably really loved being a part of it, and it's become such a huge cult classic
Yep.
over the years. So yeah, I guess he really had fun doing it and wants to come back and make it. I mean, unfortunately, John Candy's not around anymore, so that's a shame. But
Or Joan Rivers.
yeah.
But Kiki Palmer is also going to be involved, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, speaking of that, they're making I heard they're making a sequel to one of them days. I heard they're making a sequel to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, another one of them days.
Yeah.
All right. I said Joan Rivers. Wasn't she in Spaceballs? She was Dot Matrix, wasn't she?
I feel like she was, yeah.
Yeah. Daphne Zuniga also coming back. I haven't seen her.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what else she was doing, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, no shaded Daphne Zuniga. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's it for the news. I don't have anything else. Let's talk about game night. Okay, so this is a comedy about a group of friends. They have a weekly game night. One of them, his brother, comes to play, and it turns into a murder mystery that's actually real. They need to figure that out and put their gaming skills to work to solve a real life mystery. It's a lot of fun, as we mentioned, directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. Really, like, in their wheelhouse. They did a lot of stuff with like Horrible Bosses and Vacation. So this to me is very much of a time in like the post Hangover kind of R-rated buddy comedy. And there are a ton of these in the 2010s, mostly all starring Jason Bateman. And this really kind of fits right into where it is. But to me, it's like an elevated version of it. It really looks good. It has like a great story to it, very stylized. And it's kind of like above most of those other ones for me. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that, we mentioned that they had first worked on Horrible Bosses, which was early on in their career. They worked with Bateman. I think it says a lot that Bateman was originally going to direct this movie. He came in as a producer, and once they brought in Daley and Goldstein to work on it, he decided that it would be better if they directed it and stepped back, which I think says a lot about how he feels about them after working with them on Horrible Bosses, that he had a lot of faith in what they were going to do and was willing to step away from directing. So yeah, they worked together well. But yeah, I liked Horrible Bosses quite a bit, more than I thought that I would. Didn't love it. I liked it, though. I didn't care that much for Vacation, but that's probably my own bias about, the endless remakes that come down the pike. But
How do you remake that?
yeah, but Game Night was such a pleasant surprise that you really don't know what to expect, and it's just done with such humor, and yet there are stakes that you actually feel throughout it, and they keep you guessing. And most importantly, it's not that long too. It doesn't drag out. It gets in. It hits all these good points. You have Jason Bateman doing great Jason Bateman things, and it gets out, but it keeps you engaged the whole time. The other thing is, I just think that Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams have incredible chemistry together, which you can never be sure. I think people forget how funny Rachel McAdams can be. Jason Bateman, obviously, we've discussed my love of Jason Bateman and your so feelings about Jason Bateman, but I've always loved
I
him.
have some thoughts.
Yeah, so I just think they work really well together, and enjoyed the two of them a lot.
Originally, they wanted Amy Adams in that part.
Can you believe that? I mean, of course, it feels like blasphemy for me to say I like Rachel McAdams better than Amy Adams. I think that would have been great, though, because it's rare that she does those kinds of movies anymore either. I mean, The Muppets is one thing, but that's not this. I think it would have been fun to watch her stretch those comedy chops again. I'm still waiting for her to come back and do something like that. But yeah, I think this, hate to say it, but probably the right call. Rachel McAdams is really well cast in this.
The only comedy I think I know of Amy Adams being in is Talladega Nights, where she's
Right.
that assistant, and she's okay in that. I mean,
And she's more the straight person in that.
yeah, yeah. Some serious actors just can't be funny, and a lot of funny actors can be serious. I don't know why that discrepancy is
I
there, but it
think
seems to
she
be the
would be
case.
really good if you let her go. I don't know anymore because she's a little older now, and I'm not sure she'd want to do it. But I do think. I mean, even if you going back to see Junebug, I think that she's got some comedy in her,
That's true.
and if you let her go, she'd probably be a lot of fun. But yeah, that those days are probably gone. Now she's
Yep.
chasing that Oscar. She's gotten into the Leo DiCaprio space where
Right.
she's gonna chase that Oscar till she gets it.
Well, you mentioned Jason Bateman in this, and I don't want to get too far into the cast, but since you said him doing Jason Bateman things, yeah, tough for me. I think I think I like Bateman and his particular brand of acting in a serious role. I realized in watching this that he's a lot like Tommy Lee Jones or Jason Statham, where he does one thing and you can put him in a comedy and he's doing that thing and it's okay, like it stands out. But if you put him in something serious like Ozark, I really enjoyed him in Ozark, and to me he's doing the same thing. So that is like a better setting for that sort of sarcastic kind of tone that he has.
See, I don't know. I really liked him in Ozark as well. I thought, and even when we saw Carry On, I think he has a bit of a darkness now that works. But I don't know. I think that I don't want to say no one better. I hate using those kinds of huge declaratives, but I think the way he reacts to other people doing things is probably one of my favorite acting things that he does. He has this way of like someone saying something to him and him muttering or like non sequitur under his breath, like a response to it, which I think is an art that not everybody can do. And I really think he's great at it. Like, there's a whole bunch of parts in this movie where people say silly things, or where she's talking about getting the mob doctor to fix the wound, and he's like, "Well, do you know a mob doctor?" And like the way he says these things, I just love his delivery of those kinds of lines. His incredulousness, that's the word. He does like incredulous better than anybody else, and it always makes me laugh.
Well, that's the thing that bugs me is like he's incredulous because there's an air of superiority in a lot of the things that he says.
Yeah, that probably says a lot about me, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who would probably not say kind things about me, but yeah, I think that's why I love it. Like, I think that just kind of and actually strangely enough, I watched this with my son, and I told him how much I liked Jason Bateman, and like midway through the movie, he's like, "Yeah, it's like he sounds like you," and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's probably right."
Oh,
I'm like,
interesting.
"That's probably true." I was like, "Yeah." Oh,
He really seems put upon by the stupidity of other people. That's kind of what it
yeah.
is, and it comes off as mean to me, and it's always been that way, and it feels very much like that's the
Yeah,
lane.
we just found our break because I'm pretty sure that is how I live my life. And that's probably how I speak to my kids sometimes, and that's probably why I I love Jason Bateman more than the average person.
To be fair, I probably speak to people that way too, but I hate that about myself, and so I see it in
That's
Jason
fair.
Bateman, and
You
I
know
don't
what?
like it.
I'm too old now not to just embrace it. What can I do?
That's veering into Larry David territory.
Right. Yeah.
So to me, he's kind of like one note, and you can put him in like there are varying degrees of that one note. But if you really want to see it, uh, sort of like a crazy version of this, watch him in the Change Up from 2012, where he has to become Ryan Reynolds in a body swap, who is the other like one note guy in Hollywood, like sort of a Jason Bateman turned up to 11. And so when they have to be each other, it is like maddening
Yeah,
and not
I
good.
really did not like that movie, and probably for that reason. Like, I like my Jason Bateman as Jason Bateman. I didn't want to see that, and I did not enjoy that.
Those are
It
two
was no
people,
face off. I'll tell you that much.
that's for sure. Two people I did not like. The only reason I watched it, Olivia Wilde, very early for her. But yeah, it's tough for me to watch him. But at the same time, I think Rachel McAdams and like how sweet she is kind of like a nice foil to that, and it works well together in this. And I think the tone of these films that he's in are kind of good for that note that he plays. Everything from like Horrible Bosses, Bad Words, which he
Yeah,
directed.
you're absolutely right that that's the thing about him. He needs a foil. Like that's why Arrested Development works so well.
Yeah.
That what you have is him playing off of the insanity of everybody else. And as
Yeah.
I said, I don't think there's anybody better at reactive sarcasm than him. But he needs that person to be able to work off of. Because without it, there's just not much for him to carry. He has to be playing off of another person.
Right. And I think this is like a whole 10 years of him doing that. Even in Central Intelligence, which, you know, I know you love, he's the same guy in that. Maybe a little more biting, but it's really his wheelhouse,
Yeah,
the
and I love that
2010s.
too. Part of why I love that movie. That was a movie that I think was just so well cast. I think that's why it worked
Yeah.
so well. Everyone in it was doing the peak thing that they do, and you're
Yep.
like, yeah, everybody's great in this because they're doing all the things they're good at.
Yep. I think this run of films for Bateman is and just like this genre in general is a bit of a backlash from the Apatow films of the 2000s with the comedy and sort of like a sensitivity to these people. But while those were sort of like man children who are very insecure, this film in particular has a lot of male insecurity in it. And I think that's kind of what throws me off with Bateman is that he's still Bateman, but he's also like really insecure. So how can you have that sort of air of superiority and still be insecure like that?
Yeah, see, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is why I like him and why in some ways I think I relate to him because I've always seen that. And maybe that's just something you don't see, which why you don't really love it. I think he always plays the sarcasm. It's like a mask to hide a certain insecurity that's right underneath the surface. I've never seen him as just a pompous jerk. I think it's always a slight overcompensation where he's yeah, at least that's how I've always read it. And maybe because I'm reading myself into it, it's hard to say. But yeah, so maybe that's the difference. If you don't see that part of it, I can see why you'd think it's just very off-putting. But I've always gotten that. This movie's just a little more explicit about it.
And what I kind of realized rewatching it is that it's just filled with male insecurity. Like everybody in that group of game night people, the men are all insecure all the way throughout the movie, which is funny because you have Kevin, the Lamore Morris character, finds out his wife slept with a celebrity. So he spends a big chunk of the film being really worried about that and insecure. And then you have, I think it's Ryan, the Billy Magnuson character, who is clearly overcompensating by bringing these Instagram models to game night every week. But then he brings like a smart woman and he's immediately like just totally insecure because he looks like an idiot. Although at the end, I don't know if you caught this, but when the camera's going over Gary's like plan, with all the details and stuff on it over the credits, there's an image that tells us that the Billy Magnuson character actually went to Harvard,
I
which
didn't
is
see that.
yeah. So that's kind of
That's
interesting.
really funny.
But he's still so insecure when he's challenged by a smart
It's
woman.
not even that he's insecure. He's an idiot. The
He's
whole
just
movie.
he's
So
just an idiot.
that's really funny. I didn't
She
catch
kind of
that. I
wears him
was looking
down.
at the board. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but that kind of makes it. That doesn't really explain his character very well. Then, like, why
No.
would he be so
I think that's
insecure?
just a
Or
thing at the end to make them laugh, but it doesn't really fit into the movie. It's fine. I'll throw
yeah,
that one away.
that's
Um,
true. Yeah,
by the way, as you so we'll start talking about the cast, I guess. But yeah, Lamar Morris, uh, I really enjoy his work,
me
and
too.
this goes back to when he came in the New Girl. I was watching the New Girl, but when it started, and Damon Wayans Jr. was the initial roommate in that.
Coach.
Yeah, and he ends up having to leave. I forgot, he got another show, whatever it was. And I was really upset because, when you find a good cast of characters that work well together, swapping out anybody, I think is dangerous. And I really love Damon Wayans Jr., so it was disappointing to me. So, Lamar Morris steps into that, and it just knocked it out of the park. I mean, he was so funny and not in any way trying to be that character or bring the same energy. It was a completely different kind of energy that
Mhm.
just worked in its own way. And ever since then, whenever I see him in something, I just think he's excellent. And he's also got that really. He's just good at delivering certain lines, like the
Yeah.
line that he drops about the glass tables. Where he's like, "Glass tables are acting weird." Like there's just a certain delivery to that would be
Mhm.
cheap in a lesser actor, but the way he says it. And I was watching outtakes, and it took a ton of takes just to get that because every time he said it, uh, other people laughed, just the way that he said it, and I can
Mhm.
see that. It's just such a well-delivered line that they couldn't hold it together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's great, and he played Garrett Morris in Saturday Night, which just came out.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like him. Everybody in this cast, it's just a bunch of it's a strong cast, we'll put it that way.
It really is. I mean, there's no weak link in it, I don't think. Where do you land on Billy Magnuson?
He's been in a few things over the past couple of years that I've actually really enjoyed. He was in a show called, Made for Love that was on it was, I think it was, like, made for HBO Max,
Mhm.
but I watched it because, Kristen Milotti was in it, and obviously I really liked her, so
Oh,
and
yeah.
he plays like a, I guess, like a Mark Zuckerberg type of character who is kind of holding her hostage. It's hard to explain, but he plays like a tech billionaire, and
Mhm.
he was really good in that, and I think that's one of the first things I'd seen him in. Um, I had forgotten that he was actually in Game Night, so when I watched it again, I was like, "Oh, like, that was him." Um, so yeah, I think he's, really good at playing a slightly dim character. He was really good.
He's somebody I don't know whether I like or dislike for some reason, and I looking over his IMDb, he's been in a ton of things that I've seen.
Well, he played Kato Kalin all the way back in that, People
Really?
versus O.J. Simpson
Oh,
show
okay.
that I watched. So, and again, I didn't really remember him. He's just kind of there, but yeah, he was even in that.
That's the thing is, like, he's not memorable to me, even though he's been in a lot of things I've watched. Also a lot of things I haven't watched, but he really, kind of made a mark for me in Ingrid Goes West, where he plays Elizabeth Olsen's brother because he's just so, like, kinda smarmy. Like, he seems like a fun-loving sort of idiot again, but he's also sort of mean and, like, has bad intentions.
Well, that's what I think interesting about him as an actor, that his persona. I mean, when you look at him, he can give off a certain vibe. Like you could see him in the '80s getting tons of work as like the guy who's the head of a frat. Like
Yeah.
he would be that guy in the '80s. He would have had a ton of work playing that character. And so now, being an actor now with that kind of energy, I think it's hard for him to find a place because just when you look at him, you get a vibe. And
Right.
so he's done a pretty good job of trying to subvert that vibe in certain ways. But yeah, a bit of an actor at a time. He would have been all over those movies. He would have been like the Ted McGinley or something of the '80s. He would have been all over that.
Yeah, he's great in this. It is, everybody's great in it in, like, bringing their own thing to it, but my favorite, because he plays against type, is Kyle Chandler, who I've never seen in a comedy before, and I've never seen him smile before, and even I watched some interviews with him on the press tour for this, and he's even, like, a cranky, like, buttoned-up guy on the press tour, but in this movie, he's so great as, like, the charismatic, like, successful guy. I mean, we find out that he isn't very successful, but you just never see that from him, and it's like no notes. It's perfect. He's just so great. Everybody, like, I see him in Zero Dark 30, or like he's kind of like John Hamm, and that John Hamm outside of Mad Men for a while was just playing like a suit, like the way he did in Top Gun
Right.
Maverick, and
They're guys that like where Billy Magnuson gives off, frat guy. They give off like FBI agent vibes.
yeah, Kyle Chandler definitely has that, but this shows some great range, and I would love to see more of this from him because I love that guy,
Yeah.
even though he seems sort of one note as well for the most part. in a lot of things. He's just great. He has like dad energy that I really like.
Well, so speaking of great parts, I mean, we obviously have to talk about Jesse Plemons. I mean, this is around the time I believe that he was still working on Breaking Bad. So, you get some strong Todd energy off of him, but there's just such a subversiveness about the character, and and the fact that it just makes everyone uncomfortable is so well done.
He really seems like he seems like Todd if he went in the other direction
Yeah.
and
So this is a
wasn't
couple of
like
years. Actually, it's a couple of years after he played Todd. So
yeah.
a few years down the road. But yeah.
But if you look at his filmography around this time, he is all over the place. Also playing a cop sometimes, but he's in The Irishman. He's in this. He's in The Post. He's an American Made. So Judas and the Black Messiah, and then The Power of the Dog. Like he really can't be pinned down. And in a lot of things, he's very sort of minimal with his on-screen time, but it's just so
Yeah.
powerful.
He makes
A
a
lot of people
huge
talk
presence.
about him in Civil War and how that's like the most memorable scene of the film. And he kind of brings that to this too, a little bit. Like he's a scene stealer. And what's great in this is that you almost don't know if he's messing with everybody or not, or if he's just that guy.
Right.
And it's just so funny. I mean, he's like truly the straight guy in this, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. And it's important to, like you said, it's he doesn't have a ton of screen time. And yeah, you could overdo it. You could have overdone it with that character, but they don't. It's just enough where every time you see him, like I love in the way they react to when they see him. It's almost like he's a horror movie villain. Like there's some great shots like that, and you get
Yeah,
just enough that the payoff at the end really works, and you feel like you've got a good arc for him, but not too much where you get sick of him.
that whole first scene where he's getting the mail and he's introduced. I mean, he's shot very differently than Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. He's like very tight on him, and uh, just what a great character establishment. Like I wait until later to get the mail, so I don't have to make an extra walk to the mail, and uh, that clearly can't be profitable for Frito Lay. Like he's just such a cerebral guy, and you have to love it. I can't think of anybody who would have done that part better.
No,
He's just so good.
I agree.
But it turns out that he's kind of the mastermind of the whole thing, which is like I mean that kind of shows you that he has
A lot of
uh,
time on his hands.
a lot of time on his hands, and but just that he knows how to have fun too. I mean, like maybe he doesn't because he takes it up to a level that it probably shouldn't be, but he's kind of the mastermind, and I love that. I love that he's the guy. And I mean, it turns out maybe there's another guy involved too, but just what a great centerpiece for the film that he's the one pulling the strings. And it kind of makes me think about the cinematography. Like we'll get into that a lot, but there's a big thing where they use tilt shift lenses, and tilt shift lenses are where the in a camera the glass in the lens is shifted, so it's not like parallel to the sensor, and that's how you get sort of a miniature look. And you have these moments in the film, like establishing shots for scenes where it looks like they're on a board game, where everything looks like a little piece of a house in like the Game of Life or something. And what I realized is that I think that is to show you that all of these people are playing this game that Gary's overseeing. Like they're on Gary's chessboard, basically, which I think is really cool and really smart as a tool.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on that. At first I just thought it was a cool effect because the movie
Yeah.
itself. But yeah, thinking about it in those terms is actually even another layer to it. That's probably right.
And there's also when they do they do great montages to kind of speed up time where they show Billy Magnuson with the Instagram models over and over, and when Max and Annie meet, they should kind of fast forward through their life together.
Yeah, that's a great opening montage.
It
Actually,
really
it
is.
gives you so much information with very minimal time.
There's so much great stuff like that in this, but in that moment, they show them kissing on the subway, and the readout behind them says, "Don't trust Gary." So there's a little Easter egg in there that kind of sets it up for you unconsciously if you catch that.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's really kind of peppered throughout that this is Gary's thing. And you really wouldn't know that unless you watch it a few times and spend a lot of time thinking about it like I did. But that's why we're here. Yeah, just to kind of get a little more into the cinematography. This is what makes this film stand out to me above all the other films of this time. It's just so well shot, and it looks so unique in the way it's presented, which is clearly a choice. The BP or the DP is Barry Peterson. He worked on a lot of stuff in this space with these kind of comedy films. He did Central Intelligence. He did The Spy Who Dumped Me, Thunder Force, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. So this is really kind of his wheelhouse. But this is like kicked up a lot. And what I see in it is a lot of David Fincher, which is like throughout. So did you catch any David Fincher sort of tone in this?
Yeah, that's a good catch because having recently watched Fight Club again, as we talked about a couple
Direct
weeks ago.
reference.
Yeah, it's like you can really see it. You can see the influence of the camera movement and all of that kind of work of getting inside of things. Yeah, you could very much see that.
There's so much Fincher in this. I mean, The Game, the David Fincher film, is a similar story. And there's even a poster for this that really looks a lot like the Criterion Collection cover for The Game. So there has to be like a conscious reference here. And even to the score, I mean, the music done by Cliff Martinez, he did a lot of work with Soderbergh, but it sounds like Fight Club. It sounds like The Killer, like it's kind of techno.
Right.
There's just so much Fincher in this that I really, really enjoyed catching. And then sort of the pièce de résistance is the egg scene, which is mind blowing.
It having a shot like that in a movie like this is really something, and you just don't expect to see that intricate level of work in a throwaway comedy. I don't want to call it throwaway, but you know what I mean, like a low budget kind of comedy movie like this. A one take shot following an object is really high level stuff.
Yeah, I watched a kind of behind the scenes making of it, and it's a lot of digitally stitched stuff, so it's not like purely one take, and a lot of CGI. Where, like when, there's this shot where she throws the egg across to Jason Bateman.
Oh, I knew that. I mean, she didn't actually throw that.
Yeah, there's no egg at all. And then, but what's interesting is like there's a camera on a cable, follows him over, but then there are a lot of things called Texas switches, which is like if you're in a movie and you see your star fall off screen and then get back up and it's the star, but it was really the stunt double at the beginning. So there's a lot of that in this where like she throws him the egg. There's no egg, but he kind of puts his hand behind a wall and somebody hands him an egg. So then he's running with an actual egg. There's a lot of cool stuff like that. And it's just so much fun. It's more fun than I can imagine any of these films have when you're making something like that. And again, it's like so Fincher-esque. Just there's so many shots like that. The lock, like the camera turning with the lock when they're rescuing Brooks, or the way the camera is kind of fixed to the back of a car when they're driving, which we see in The Killer too. So that's another, maybe Fincher took that from this, I don't know. But just so much good visual stuff to chew on here that makes it so much better than a lot of these. And that paired with the writing just makes this stand out. Like maybe the best comedy of the 2010s. That's a little hyperbolic.
That's a bold statement, but I'm not sure I disagree. Yeah, I'm not even sure I could disagree with that. It's really enjoyable. It's much more enjoyable than you would expect based on all the other stuff that had come out around the same time. You're right. Speaking of the writing, so we just have to mention, I mean, it's credited to Mark Perez, who supposedly came up with the idea. This is another one of those movies where they had the title and like want to make a movie around it. find a writer who pitches some ideas. But by all accounts, Daley and Goldstein came in and rewrote the script, and that seems pretty evident.
Mhm.
If you know any of their other work, it seems really obvious that they probably did a full rewrite of the script to bring in their own feeling to it, and they have a good feel for this kind of banter, and that's what made Dungeons and Dragons such a fun movie to watch, which was
Mhm.
a really pleasant surprise. I had zero
Yeah.
expectations for Dungeons and Dragons and found
Kind of
myself,
a phenomenon.
yeah, and really, I don't want to say loved. I really, really liked it. Um, and you can see that kind of thing here. That it's just they have this great ability to have banter dialogue between people that keeps things light and moving, and interesting and entertaining.
Yeah. They're also very good at setting up jokes and paying them off later, or having running gags like that table thing, which is just fantastic.
And
And there are a
the
lot of
Fight
things.
Club, the rich
Fight
person Fight
Club.
Club coming through. Yeah.
Yeah, there are just so many things like that that I think really are smart, because you're not beat over the head with these things that are like continuous running gags, but you remember them when they're paid off, and they could be paid off an hour later and you're like, oh yeah, like I get that now. So just really, really smart writers, and perfect for this. Like it really kind of elevates it.
Yeah, but also not above a bloody white dog joke, which that's a good set piece. Who's trying to clean a dog, and
Yeah.
then it's just the T-shirt of his wife and the whole thing. That was it's a well
Even that is
crafted scene.
smart.
It's a well
Yeah.
crafted scene.
By the way, that dog Olivia was also in the Steve McQueen film Widows in the same year. So big year for Olivia on
Wow.
screen. It's good that they rewrote it. Mark Perez, looking at his IMDb.
I was gonna say the same thing. That's the other reason that that they rewrote it, because when you look at Mark
Yeah.
Perez's other work, you're like, yeah, okay.
Herbie Fully Loaded,
The Country
accepted.
Bears, yeah.
What the hell's the Country Bears?
That's another Disney thing. Country
Oh,
Bears. That's a I believe, yeah, it's a ride at Disney World, and then of course they
oh,
got that IP and made a movie about it.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. So they definitely helped him out, and uh, they were supposed to direct the Flash movie, but they ended up writing it, I think, right?
Well, not really. I mean, they were hired to do it because they had done
Mhm.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, which
Right.
is another good example of I think they're a good fit for that kind of movie, because Spider-Man's supposed to be wise ass and
Yeah.
rapid fire talking, and I think that fits into their style. So good work there, and I liked Homecoming. So I think based on that, they brought them in to do the Flash, and they wrote a treatment of it, and from reading about it's very much in line with what I would have how I like my superhero movies. I've always said that I don't love superhero movies that take place in space or with
Oof.
intergalactic issues. I like on the ground, real crime fighting, like a crime, a superhero that fights crime in their town, kind of like on the streets. Like that's what I enjoy. Yes, not realism, but just a locality.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted for the Flash. They wanted a kid trying to learn his powers and very much be a grounded kind of superhero movie. But when
Right.
they ended up meeting with Ezra Miller to discuss it, uh, they were not on the same page, and obviously the studio decided to move in a different direction, and they were just odd men out. So they had so I think they kind of created the structure, a bit of the structure what the movie was built on,
Mhm.
but really not their movie at all.
Right. Yeah. That's probably for the best. I mean, they keep making things like this that
Well,
are
I was going to
interesting.
say, I mean, as of now, they've been tapped to make a movie about Monopoly.
Jesus
They're the
Christ.
ones that are supposed to be making that Monopoly movie, and of course, I immediately reject the idea of making a Monopoly movie. But look, after game night, it's like, well, if you're going to bring in two people to make a movie about Monopoly, these are clearly the guys to do it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Now I actually have a little bit of hope for the Monopoly movie, because who knows?
So they're sort of pigeonholed as the board game guys now.
Maybe.
Wow. I don't know if this is the right climate for any kind of Monopoly movie.
That is a fair point. Two things that we didn't mention. won an uncredited role by Jeffrey Wright,
Right.
which I have no idea how they got him to show up for this, but it was really cool to see him. Very
Yeah.
unexpected and just kind of a throwaway part.
Yeah.
But that was great.
Uh,
The other thing that we forgot to talk about, of course, was the scene where Jason Bateman's character gets shot,
oh,
and
right,
and
right,
how
right.
well he handles being shot. And we have talked about this before, that he took a bullet as well as anybody, but mostly like Gerard Butler in Cop Shop, who seemed to be
Yeah.
impervious to bullets. And we're like, is this character related to that character? Because they both get shot and it's nothing, no big deal.
Then he gets a knife directly in the. He's like, "Oh, you put it in my bullet hole."
Right.
I've never seen more nonchalance about
Impervious
hitting
to
bone.
pain. And also
Yeah.
a small part by Michael C. Hall,
Right.
but and we don't get to see him do a lot of comedy, so that was fun as well.
Yeah.
But that whole end sequence, uh, again, is a good example of keeping that tone where it's kind of an action thing, but not really. And then they keep it a little bit surprising. I mean, the conveyor belt gag is really funny, and
Yeah.
getting the drop on people. I mean, of course, it's all pretty silly, but it's it works pretty well.
And that's another example of a callback where he ties up Michael C. Hall with a bungee
Right.
cord, and of course Brooks is like, "Oh, you get a bungee cord, you immediately go pervy."
Right.
That's a that's just a perfect
So
example.
here's my question for you though. I want to talk about the ending. Spoiler alert for a 10-year-old movie at this point, or
Yeah.
7. But how did you feel about the fact that his brother, that Brooks ends up getting rich off of the Woodside thing? I'm not sure that I love that payoff either.
Mhm.
So the idea of him finally admitting that he's kind of a loser is a good place, but then it's like he ends up becoming a millionaire at the end, and like his life works out completely in a way where he becomes the guy that they thought he was. In some ways, I didn't love that
Yeah.
payoff. That was that's the one thing I didn't necessarily love.
I think for me it would have been more satisfying. He gets with the doctor, and that's just kind of his life. He's partnered up like everybody else in the game group, and he's just one of them now.
Right.
But yeah, he sells that Whitsock list, which is basically, I don't care if you warn people or not. And how would you warn them without, like, I mean, so he says that he warns everybody on this is a witness protection list. He gets everybody to pay him $20,000. But why would they pay him without the knowledge of like what information he's going to share with them first?
Yeah, it's
I don't
it's kind of a
understand that.
cheap wrap up. I think that they were trying to tie things up a
Yeah.
little too neatly in a bow, almost like Gary's board at the end, where they're just trying to tie
Yeah.
up all the pieces. And I don't think it was necessary to kind of do that. I know it's nice to tie everything up in a little bow, but I thought that was a pretty poor payoff. And then, of course, though, you at the very end where there's people outside probably there to kidnap Brooks again, probably for selling the Witsec list,
Right.
and they just kind of end it. And I don't not love that ending because it seems kind of funny that a here we go again kind of thing, but also not totally sure what they're doing there.
Yeah, it didn't even dawn on me who they were until you just said that. But it does set it up for a sequel if that's in the
It
works. I
does,
don't know.
but hopefully they'll never make it. I like leaving it right there.
What's great about this, one of many things, is that this is a standalone film that's head and shoulders above a lot of the films from this decade. But all of the other things like The Hangover, Horrible Bosses, even these guys also wrote Vacation Friends for Hulu that had a sequel. This is something that's left alone, at least for the time being, and it's like beloved. So I think it's a great example of why you should make one and done, and just let it be a thing, and you don't have to convolute it with more and more iterations of it that get weaker and weaker. So I like leave game night alone right now. That's what I say.
Yep.
But one thing about Brooks that he says he's going to buy that house that he rented, and that is the same house the Vulture lived in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
How about that? I guess they really like that house.
Yeah, maybe they had it on loan or something and just threw him in it pretty quickly. But yeah, so let's look at the numbers. I've been forgetting to do this lately, and I really want to get back to it. This is pretty well received. It has an 85% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is great. I mean, it's really
Yeah, I think after
pretty.
all the middling comedies that came out in the the mid 2000s, or the mid 20, whatever the hell you call it, like 2010 and on. There you go. What do we call
Yeah,
that? Whatever. The
the
teens, sure, the
2010s.
2010s, sure. That period. I think this was like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and viewers feel the same way. I mean, a little lower, 78, but still not terrible. Actually, I thought that would be a little higher. Actually, now that I think about it, but 3.5 on Letterboxd, which is sort of middle of the road. Yeah, leaning toward better, but not bad. It's a $37 million budget, which is right around what most of these comedies are throughout the 2010s, so like 40-ish. And it grossed 118 million, which is not bad. I mean, it definitely made its money back after advertising. So, yeah, it's a profitable film. It's shocking to me that they are not making a sequel to this. A profitable mid-budget comedy
Don't
that's
jinx it.
very well received. Yeah, we're going to see that news next week, I bet. Why did I do it? So, yeah, okay, that's it for game night. Let's talk about what we watched this week.
So what did I watch this week? I didn't have time to watch a ton of things, but I watched two things. One of which was Ballerina.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see Ballerina? You saw Ballerina, right?
Yeah.
So I it was fine. It was fine. So for me, when I watch these kind of movies, I'm only looking for two things. I thought the storyline wasn't that great, and that's the thing about the John Wick universe. I know they're trying to expand the universe, but for me, even the sequels to John Wick, it's like once you started expanding the world, I became less and less interested in it. I'm not particularly sure I care about all these fringe things and all these boring factions and everything else. But what I'm really looking for in this movie is inventive ways that they kill people. Because that's really the only reason we're watching these movies. And there are a couple of things in this movie that surprised me. That I'm like, well, I don't think I've seen that before. I mean, one was a whole final sequence with flamethrowers, which was pretty impressive. That was a good one. I actually liked the flamethrower part. It went on a little too long, but there were some decent flamethrower things. But
Do you think a hose could counter that flamethrower?
probably not, but it looked cool.
Yeah.
But the other part, when in the middle of the movie where she gets attacked and she's using those grenades, that was some stuff. There are a couple of those where I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're looking for new ways that people get killed in movies, it's probably worth a look just for those. I laughed a couple of times. I was like, wow, that was a pretty good one. But other than that, it didn't mean much to me. The other movie that I watched, though, I saw the trailer for this movie months ago, and then it just seems to have come and went with zero. I don't even know if it was in the theater; it just came and went.
Happens a lot
It's called
lately.
The Ballad of Wallace Island,
Mm-hmm.
and this just dropped on Peacock last week, and I've really been looking forward to seeing it, so I watched it. It's a pretty simple movie about a musician who used to be in a group with his ex-wife, and this strange guy who happens to be rich brings them both to the island for kind of like a reunion without telling either one of them that the other is coming, or without just telling the main songwriter that that the other one is coming, because he
Mm-hmm.
kind of broke up the group. And but it's just a lovely little story about relationships and yeah, it's hard to explain. I'll just use the word heartwarming, and it's a pretty nice story, but also kind of funny and a little sad. Um, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. I think it was a really nice watch, just a really nice change of pace in this climate of tent poles and remakes and everything else. Just a simple little movie that I enjoyed, that I feel like more eyeballs should be on it.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to watching it. I didn't get to the theater to see it, so I'm glad to know it's on Peacock because the trailer really made it seem like something that's in my wheelhouse. It's just really sweet seeming.
Yeah, it's not as great as the best of these, and then there were a few movies that they're like this. Maybe a couple that I enjoyed a little more, but this one is really good and well worth your time.
Yeah, how does it compare to like a John Carney film?
Yeah, obviously that's the best comparison, and I think that it's not quite at the level of those. And maybe that's my own personal bias because I really love John Carney's movies.
Right.
But a step below, but not that far below.
Good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. What did I watch this week? I didn't watch a lot. I watched a lot of bad things that I won't mention, but yesterday I went to see Materialists.
Oh yeah,
it's the new film from Celine Song, follow up to the Oscar-nominated Past Lives, which is a film that I deeply, deeply love. I think that is just like one of the best directorial debuts that I've seen in a long time. And I was hoping for a lot of that same feeling from this. And I mean, there's like the DNA of Materialists or the DNA of Past Lives in this. But ultimately, it's kind of a bigger budget version of a Celine Song film that I think sort of gets watered down a little bit. It has big stars in it: Pedro Pascal, Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans. And I don't know that any of them are the right people for this film. It's about a matchmaker in New York, and seeing her talk to her clients is like, it feels like a horror movie. Like the things these people want in a partner are like shocking and so specific and seemingly unattainable. So I can't imagine being somebody who has to like match these people up when they're so demanding. And like the idea of it is that she is kind of like somebody who finds love through mathematics. Like she keeps saying, this guy checked all of our boxes, and not really open to the idea of like just falling in love with someone. And so that's kind of a big part of it. But as much as I enjoyed it, I felt it could have been better. And it almost felt like it could have ended 3 times. There was almost an ending that seemed like a direct correlation to the ending of Past Lives, which I was really hoping for. But then it went on like two more endings. Overall, I would say go see it if you can, because I think Celine Song is just an incredible filmmaker, and she comes from the theater world, and that's very much like in the DNA of what she writes. So it's good, not as good as Past Lives, but still, I think worth seeing if you can.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. There's a few movies that are on my radar this month, and I'm trying to figure out if I can get to see all of them, and if not, which ones. Like I'm still trying to see the Phoenician Scheme, that Mike Flanagan Stephen King movie,
Life of
Chuck is on the list. This one is on the list.
Megan 2.0.
No, that's not on the list. 28 years later is obviously on the list.
Yeah.
So that's already 4, and I'm not really sure I have time to catch all these. So I'm trying to decipher which is best. Life of Chuck reviews ended up being not as great as I'd expected. Oh, the initial buzz was great. So
yeah,
I put that one on the shelf. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to go get to see that.
I think it won the audience prize at TIFF last year. So it was really well received. As we've discussed, like hit or miss on Flanagan. So I don't know.
But this is a different kind of project for him. So for that reason alone, I'm kind of interested in checking it out. So,
have you seen the trailer for this new Stephen King movie, The Long Walk?
I did. I just saw it with Ballerina.
It's super unsettling.
Really unsettling. I don't really know if I want to spend 2 hours watching that. So,
it's like The Running Man or something.
Yeah.
Like nobody wins. It's just, didn't like it. All right, well, that's it for this week. Next week this is a 5-week month. So next week we're going to veer away from One Crazy Night and do a Rewatch and Reconsider film. Kind of timely because this one has Tom Cruise in it, and it's directed by James Mangold, who directed A Complete Unknown. We're going to talk about the underappreciated, at least to us, Night and Day. So join us for that and let us know what you think about that film. And we will see you then. So long. As always, thanks for listening to the Weekly Movie Throwdown. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for even more from us, visit moviethrowdownpod.com or connect with us on social media. We're Movie Throwdown on Letterboxd and at Movie Throwdown Pod everywhere.